Thank you everyone for participating. You may now turn off your camera. Moving on to formally introduce to us our speaker, let us have one of my classmates who contacted our lecturer for today during the preparation of this event. Let us all welcome Raynalyn M. Umbrog.
I am so excited to introduce to you our guest speaker for today. Why I'm excited? Because his talk is very relevant to us. Sociology of Youth. A short background for our guest speaker. He is an associate professor and a director in Development Studies program. An acting associate dean for URC Affairs in Office of Associate Dean for Research and Creative Work, and Associate Editor in Social Studies and Mission, all in Ateneo de Manila University. Without further ado, let us give a virtual applause to our first speaker for today, Dr. Jayeel S. Cornelio. Sir?
Kay Ma'am Rose, kay Riza, kay Raynalyn who has been in touch with me. Special mention si Sir Paul who initially communicated with me in January about this webinar. I met many of your professors sa UEP Sociology. With them and with you, no, sa University of Eastern Philippines. I'm just so looking forward to our conversations, to our interactions, to our conversation, to our conversations today. Hopefully, marami kayong mga makulot na mga insights from my lecture today. Isa akong sociologist na aking expertise ay sociology of generation, sociology of youth, sociology of religion. Sa umagang ito, maybe in the next 30 to 45 minutes, I'm going to share with you my own thoughts and scholarship pagdating sa sociology of youth and sociology of generations. As you can see on your screen right now, ang gusto kong pag-usapan ay understanding the youth of today. Kayo, mga kabataan. And why generational labels are wrong. Sige nga, let's have some audience participation right now. So, why don't you put in the chat box, sa tingin ninyo, what generation do you belong to? I want to see all your answers sa chat box. If you are watching us on Facebook, I want to see your answers sa Facebook comments. Tell me, sa tingin ninyo, what generation do you think you belong to? Ano yung generation na kinabibilangan ninyo? I hope that you're able to answer, no? So, okay, so merong sumagot ng Generation Z. How about the others? There are about 52 of us dito sa Zoom. Alam ko sa Facebook, there are also a number of us who are on Facebook. Tell me, anong generation do you belong to? So si Christine, sinasabi niya Generation Z. What about the others? What generation do you belong to? Well, participate naman tayo, no? Participate tayo. This is not one way, no? This is not just me teaching you. I want to hear from you. I really want to hear your thoughts and your ideas, you know? So si Arnie, si Generation Z, si Arosel, Generation Z. Wala bang magsasabi na, no, I don't belong to Generation Z. Si Ara, Generation Z din siya. Rosel, Alexander, Christine, no? Generation Z, si Mikey, si Aryan, Gen Z pa rin. What about the others? No, gusto ko makita yung nasa Facebook naman natin, no, yung ating mga kasama sa Facebook. What are they saying? It would be nice to just hear your thoughts. Ano yung mga sinasabi ninyo, na mga generational labels that you belong to? Let me see if I can look at the comments
Ano yung mga
section
sinasabi ninyo,
here dito sa Facebook. Okay, I'm also looking at your comments. Si Jovelyn, Gen Z, Joshua, Diomar, Jessa, Laika. Okay, I'm seeing all your comments. Si Sherilyn, good morning po, sociologist. Good morning din sa'yo. Okay, I'm looking, okay, so puro Generation Z. Generation Y, so we have somebody from Generation Y, si Carolina, si Lanoli, Generation Z. Okay, so si Romilin, so puro Generation Z. Okay, Generation Z. Si Alice naman is a millennial. Okay, watch this, everyone. Watch this. I'm going to debunk. I'm going to challenge. I'm going to debunk, to challenge, to confront all those labels. Ipapakita ko sa inyo na may mali sa mga labels na yan pag ginamit natin sa konteksto natin dito sa Pilipinas. I'm going to challenge. So I want you to listen carefully how a sociologist tries to understand these generational labels at paano natin to dapat i-confront at paano natin to dapat pag-isipan. Well, are you ready? So if you're ready, thumbs up naman dyan. Thumbs up naman dyan if you're ready. I want to see your thumbs up or be as interactive as you can be. I want to see those. Alam ko na may problema tayo sa internet connections, but let's see how it goes, no? Let's see how it goes. If you think I'm speaking too fast, just make a comment. Or if you already have some questions, put the questions down or in the comment section or dito sa chat if you are in Zoom. Tapos subukan ko na sagutin along the way, no? Okay, thank you so much for those thumbs up. Mary, Joy, Carla, Reynalyn, Hazel, thank you so much. No, thank you. So paano, Jennifer, thank you. Paano ba tutugunan ito? Paano ba i-confront ng isang sociologist ang mga generational labels na to? Sabi niyo, Gen Z kayo. Somebody said you're Gen Y. And then sabi ko, I could be millennial. Unang tanong, where do these labels come from? Thank you for the 3 thumbs up, Angel. Thank you. Saan ba galing ito? You're looking at your screen right now, folks, and what do you see? These are the different generational labels created for us by scholars and social scientists in North America. Tingnan ninyo, 1928 to 1945 sa baba, silent generation. And then there's the baby boomers, those who were born in 1946 to 1964. And then the Generation X, 1965 to 1980. And then the millennials daw from 1981 to 1996. And then Generation Z, kayo yun, 1997 to 2012. And ngayon may bago ng pakulo, Generation Alpha, those who were born from 2010 to 2020s. So it's so neat. It's so clean. All you have to do is to identify what year you were born in, and then voila, alam mo na kung nasaan kang generation. So those of you who were born in the early 2000s, you know that you're Generation Z. I was born in the 1980s. I know that I was born, therefore I belong to Generation Y o yung tinatawag na millennials. Ang tanong, useful ba ito? Ang tanong, the big sociological question, and if you're taking notes, this is the time to take notes. The big sociological question is, how relevant are these labels to the Filipino context? How relevant are these labels in understanding the different generations in the Philippines today? How useful are these labels? Okay, I hope you're taking notes, everyone. Paano ba dinidefine ng sociologist ang generations? From a sociological sociological perspective, you're seeing it on your screen right now. From a sociological perspective, what matters are not the year you are born in, but the shared experiences that you have collectively undergone. Isa pa. From a sociological perspective, you define a generation based on the shared experiences that people have collectively undergone. Collectively undergone. Malinaw ba? Malinaw ba? And this is a sociological thing to say, to be honest. Bakit? Kasi numbers, age, they're just a number. Age is just a number. Sinasabi natin, di ba? Pero bilang sociologist, we are interested what's going on in society, what's going on in politics, what's going on in society, in history. We're interested in those things, mga kapatid. We're interested, di ba? What is the sociological imagination? It's the ability to connect what happens in society with what happens to an individual. Agency, structure, history, free will, and the story of the person and the story of society. So hindi natin pwedeng maihiwalay yung dalawang yon because that's what makes us from our point of view as sociologists. So ganun din ang ginagawa natin dito when we want to define generations. So Dr. Cornelio, the question therefore is, saan galing ito? Now you're looking at my screen again, the generational labels. Everyone listen. These labels can make sense in the context of North America and Western Europe. Tingnan ninyo, saan sila, ano yung mga markers na yan? 19 to 28 to 1945, silent generation, these were people who were born and then who fought, who experienced the war. The baby boomers, ano yung mga baby boomers? The people who were born after World War II, the population grew after 1945 in North America and Western Europe, yung mga liberal capitalist societies, kaya nagkaroon ng population explosion, ang tawag sa kanila baby boom. Nag-boom ang mga babies. Kaya ang tawag sa kanila baby boomer. And then later on, itong baby boomers na to, when they grew up, they became part of the advocacies against the Vietnam War. They grew up in the time of the Cold War, Russia versus the US. Galing sila sa after the war, World War II, hard war, hot war. When they were born, merong Cold War, Russia and the US. Merong ipitan, merong payabangan, pero walang actual na gera, kaya siya Cold War. Generation X, these were the young people born in the 1960s to 1980. Ito yung mga kabataan, generation, matanda na sila ngayon obviously, pero at that time, when they were growing up, they benefited not just from population growth, but from economic growth. Again, North America, Western Europe. Nakukuha nyo ba? Nakukuha nyo? Are you following me? Merong story. In other words, ang bawat generation na ito. Tapos, people who were born in the 1980s, kasama na ako dyan, they were called millennials. Bakit? Kasi kami naman yung nag-come of age pagdating ng millennium, ng change ng millennium, nag-year 2000. With a very different experiences. Yung computer technology was being introduced, and the internet was being introduced, and these were people who grew up digital technology. So again, pansinin ninyo, ano yung story na nakikita natin sa development ng generational labels na ito? They all make sense in the context of North America, US, in the context of maybe the United Kingdom, maybe in the context of Western Europe, but certainly in the context of America, in the context of Canada. Ang ginagawa natin dito, we're using exactly the same labels to understand our own people. Ang problema, hindi ganun ang sociologist mag-isip eh. Look at the definition again. From a sociological perspective, you define a generation according to the shared experience that we have collectively undergone. Iba ang kwento ng mga kabataan who were born in the 1980s in the US kumpara dun sa mga Pilipino who were born in the Philippines in the 1980s. Iba rin yung karanasan ng mga Pilipino who were born or who grew up in the 1970s. So tell me, audience participation ulit tayo. Tell me, so now that you understand that history matters, now that you understand that political contexts matter, now that you understand that social issues matter, tell me, ano sa tingin ninyo yung mga experiences that people went through in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s na pinagdaanan ng mga Pilipino na hindi pinagdaanan ng ibang mga tao sa North America. Yung unique sa Philippine experience. Tell me, I want you to think. I'm giving you time right now. Answer. Tell me, bigay nyo sa comment section sa Facebook. I'm looking at your answers right now or dito sa chat box, no? Kung takot kayo, message me privately and I can also read that without mentioning your name. Kung takot kayo magkamali. Sa tingin niyo, ano yung mga experiences ng mga tao who grew up in the 1970s, who grew up in the 1980s, who grew up in the 1990s? Come on, folks. Don't disappoint me. Say something. No, say something. Share with me your thoughts. So si admin, meron siya sinasabing martial law. Okay, good. What else? Ano ba yung mga na-experience sa tingin ninyo ng mga parents ninyo or maybe lolo-lola ninyo when they were growing up in the 1960s or the 1970s or the 1980s? Anyone? Uy, ang dami natin dito. Walang nagpa-participate. Ang dami natin, 53 tayo. Sa Facebook, there are 65. Come on, help me. Help me. Social inequality, there's another comment. Si Shin, World War II. Sa nakikita ko sa Facebook, si Shin is World War II. Yeah. Okay. World War II. Si Christine Mary is People Power. Wala nang ibang na-experience ang mga tao. World War II, People Power, martial law. Okay. Improvement ng technology. Salamat, Michelle. Improvement ng technology. Michelle, yung technology ba natin, kailan talaga nag-improve dito sa Pilipinas? No? Gender inequality, meron pa ganong experience. No? Si Alice, sabi niya, gender inequality. Discrimination. Typhoon. Rafonsil, anong mga typhoon sa tingin mo yung parang karanasan, shared experiences ng maraming mga tao dito sa Pilipinas? Meron ba mga shared experiences? No? So tandaan natin na shared experiences, hindi personal lang. No? Sabi ni Diomar sa Facebook, the cultural traditions that is practiced by the primitive generation and how they behave in the society. Okay. Earthquakes. Anong mga earthquakes kaya yung mga pinagdaanan nila? Okay. Yolanda. Yeah, kayo na nandiyan sa Samar, sa Eastern Philippines, sa Leyte. You know that. You know that very well. That's a great example. Yung Yolanda Typhoon, alam natin 2013 pa yon. And you remember distinctly, lahat kayo, mapabata, mapatanda, pinagdaanan nyo yun. Very good. Okay, so I'm seeing some comment. Lahat ng typhoon experience natin, sabi ni Reynalyn, sabi ni Angel, far from pollution coming from different machineries invented right now. Okay, poverty, sabi ni Christine. Economic competence. Crisel, what does that mean? Ano yung economic competence? No? Hardship, inequality, bullying, auto personal. Very okay. Good. Good. Thank you for sharing those insights with me. I want you to think more critically. We're not only talking about your personal experience, we're talking about shared experiences. Ano yung mga pinagdaanan ng mga iba-ibang mga tao sabay-sabay. Thank you, Criselda. This is another example Mount Pinatubo eruption because it affected many Filipinos in the early 1990s. I was in grade school at that time at naalala ko talaga, nakatira ako dito na sa Maynila, and I remember distinctly when I woke up in the morning, the entire city was covered in white, gray ash. And to this day, pag pumunta ka sa sa Zambales, sa Pampanga, yung university doon, yung Holy Angel University, meron silang museum dedicated to commemorating Mount Pinatubo. So there were people who experienced that moment together. Meron naman people, sabi ni Angel dito, they experienced being under the martial law. Correct. That's another shared experience. Kaya meron mga human rights abuses. Tama ka, Kevin. Earthquake, no? Sino yung earth? So lahat ng earthquake na dumadaan dyan sa inyo sa Samar, sa Leyte, posible rin na it defines your experiences. Gaya ng Yolanda. Halimbawa, yung lindol dito sa Baguio, sa Manila noong early 1990s and really destroyed many buildings in Baguio, specifically Baguio. That defined that generation, early 1990s yun. At marami sa mga tatay ninyo ngayon or mga tito-tita, they will remember what happened at that time. You see, bear with me. Marawi Siege, if you are in Marawi, Christine, thank you. Now you are making sense. Now you are making sense. These are pivotal moments defining a generation. In fact, you can argue na pwede rin may corruption ako nakikita, posible, pero I want you to be more specific. May nakikita ako mga comments about bullying, but I want you to be specific. Shared ba yan? Nararanasan ba ng lahat yan? Paano? And then, kung nararanasan na ng lahat yan, can we really define a generation that way? Bakit? Kasi ganun ang pag-describe at pag-define natin sa generations, hindi according to the year you were born in. Therefore, watch this. Therefore, posible na hindi natin gamitin ang millennial, Gen Z, Gen Y kasi they only refer to people who were born in North America at a given point in time. Digital technology, correct. Highly educated, correct. Dito sa Pilipinas, ibang experience natin. Maybe we can describe the people who went through the martial law as the martial law generation. People who experienced 1986, after 1986, as the people power generation. Hindi lahat pare-pareho, don't get me wrong, hindi lahat pare-pareho, pero they went through that same generation, that same experience. Pwede rin natin sabihin na gaya na sinabi ninyo, merong Yolanda generation. Hindi yan na-experience ng mga taga dito sa Maynila, pero na-experience yan ng Yolanda Corridor, no? Essentially from Eastern Visayas all the way to the west, no? To the other side. And that experience, yung flooding, yung daluyong, and so forth, yung homelessness, yung kahirapan na pinagdaanan nyo noon, no, yung economic problem noon, you all went through that, and that would define your generation. Pwede yun. Yung Marawi Siege, ganun din, lalo na sa Marawi, no, sa Bangsamoro. So I want you to now you are realizing na ganun pala dapat mag-isip pag sinasabing generational labels. Experience. So, looking at my screen right now, looking at your screen right now, I am presenting to you, in other words, an alternative view. Millennial, Gen Z, are concepts developed in the West, carrying certain norms and social expectations inadequate to fully characterize Filipino youth and young adults today. The perspective offered here should inform more locally relevant work in the sociology of generations. Kuha nyo? Ulitin natin. Millennial, Gen Z are concepts developed in the West, carrying certain norms and social expectations inadequate to fully characterize Filipino youth and young adults today. Ibig sabihin, ang gusto natin mangyari, let's have more locally relevant work sa sociology of generations, sa sociology of youth. Bakit? Kasi may mga biases ang salitang millennial at Gen Z. Ipapakita ko yan sa inyo ngayon. May analytical mistakes. Looking at your screen right now, what do you see? There are two reasons kung bakit mali gamitin ang mga labels na ito in the Philippine context. The first is this. Pinaliwanag ko na ito. Ang linaw-linaw na nito by now. I hope you're able to explain this in your own way to your friends. Generational categories are directly imported from the West. Iba ang context ng North America. Mayaman silang bansa. Digitally connected sila. Galing sila sa World War II. Nabuhayan sila ng loob. Nagkaroon ng baby boomer, etc. Wala silang experience ng martial law. Wala silang experience ng Mount Pinatubo. Wala silang experience ng ako, people who were born in the 1980s, marami sa amin ang mga pinanganak born to parents na OFWs. Bakit? Kasi noong 1970s, nagsimulang magpadala ang gobyerno under Ferdinand Marcos kasi mataas yung unemployment sa Philippines dahil maraming walang trabaho, naisipan ng gobyerno ni Ferdinand Marcos na magpadala ng mga OFWs abroad. The economy was really down sa Pilipinas at that time. So yung kung tutuusin, yung mga tao, at saan tayo una nagpadala ng mga OFWs? Sa Middle East. Sila ay mga engineers at mga construction workers and so forth at that time sa Middle East. Nagpadala tayo ng mga domestic helpers sa Singapore at Hong Kong later on na, mga 1990s na. Pero in the 1980s, it was really all our professionals. Bakit? Kasi bagsak na bagsak yung ekonomiya natin at that time. So nakikita ninyo, yung economic situation, may impact siya sa generation ng mga tao noon, ng mga tatay, nanay, siguro tito, tita natin, at marami sa kanila naging OFW sa Middle East. And guess what? Isa ako sa mga pinanganak born to an OFW father, a seaman. So in other words, I will argue na posibleng meron tayong OFW generation. Mga kabataan who were born to parents who are OFWs at they're also thinking na the only way for them to survive as a Filipino is not by working in the Philippines but by also working in other countries, no, as OFWs. So meron tinatawag na OFW or migration consciousness. Yan yung unang problema. Pangalawang problema ay young people are essentialized by using these generational categories. Ini-essentialize natin. Pupuntahan natin yan ngayon. Ano yung ibig sabihin ng essentialism? I'll give you some examples. Tingin kayo sa aking screen. Okay? Na-enjoy nyo po ba yung aking lecture before I carry on? Kung na-enjoy nyo naman, pwede ko bang makita ang heart or thumbs up? Pwede ko bang makita ang mga emoji na yan? If you're still enjoying our lecture, magbigay rin kayo ng mga insights at mga comments. Parang dalawa lang ang nag-e-enjoy. So, salamat sa dalawang nag-e-enjoy, si Ara at saka si Annabelle, saka si Hazel. Thank you so much. I hope sa inyong tatlo ay this is making parang marami kayong na-realize, no? About life. Oh, yun, marami na bigla. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Here we go. Problemahin natin, let's problematize yung mga tinatawag na essentialisms. Ano yung nangyayari, friends? Look at this. Look at your screen, no? Look at your screen. Ang nangyayari is that because of these generational labels, we are biased against the youth. Oh, Novi, thank you. Yes po. Thank you for the pink hearts and the red hearts and the thumbs up. Thank you. Tingnan nyo sa screen niyo, youth as a moral problem. Sabi ng isang social scientist na Pilipino, si Amarilis Torres, sabi niya, nagkakaroon ng generational conflict because old and new values collide, which may lead to tectonic disruptions between generations. Yung tinatawag nating generational gap, folks, yung tinatawag nating generational gap Sa totoo lang, may generational gap because the values of your parents are very different from your values as young people. At bakit kayo magkaiba ng values? Bakit magkaiba kayo ng pananaw sa buhay? Because you were born in a very different social and historical context. Tandaan ninyo, mas maraming open-minded na ngayon, halimbawa sa mga kabataan tungkol sa LGBT. Mas marami ng open-minded. Yung mga panahon ng parents natin, mga tito or tita natin, pag sinabing bakla, nakakahiya. Pag sinabing lesbiana, pakasal mo na yan para mabuntis na yan, para mabago yan. Naririnig pa rin natin yan from these parents today and from these adults today. But from young people today, you are seeing and hearing a lot of resistance. Bakit sasabihin nila, what's wrong with being LGBTQ? What's wrong with being different, no? May mga ganong klaseng mindset, no? May mga ganong klaseng pagtingin. Or salot daw sa lipunan, Edward. Thank you so much for saying that. And I'm sorry kung ikaw mismo ang nakarinig niyan or narinig mo yan para sa ibang tao. I am very sorry that you're hearing that. But that is exactly what happens. Ang laging tingin ay ang mga kabataan yung problema. Ang matatanda, hindi sila problema. Bakit? Kasi may generational conflict. Generational conflict because you belong to different, you grew up in different times, different histories, different political situations, different religious attitudes even. Well, pag mamaya sa open forum, pag-usapan din natin siguro religion, yung mga paniniwala, pananampalataya, paano ito nagbabago. No? Okay? But essentialisms stick. Essentialisms stick. No? Especially if they serve the interests of powerful sectors. Listen, ito medyo magiging tayo ngayon, talagang mas papasok na tayo sa empirical material. Worth reiterating here is the interest of businesses and the advertising industry to discipline the youth. This has the obligations too on how we understand the youth vote. Pansinin niyo, no? Pansinin niyo. Saan ba galing? Bakit ba pag sinabing millennial or Gen Z, dapat kailangan tech savvy, magaling sa technology, dapat maabilidad, dapat kayang mag-multitasking. Sinasabi din na impatient daw, laging naghahanap ng mga purpose sa buhay, palipat-lipat ng trabaho. Yun yung mga biases, di ba? Saan ba galing yung mga stereotypes na yan? Basahin ko lang yung comment dito ni Admin BA Sociology 4M. They thought na meron silang moral ascendancy. Exactly, no? Exactly. Pero tayo bilang sociologists, naiintindihan natin bakit merong generational conflict. Ibang panahon na kinalakihan nila, ibang panahon na kinalakihan natin ngayon. The job of the sociologist is to reveal, no? To reveal ano yung mga values na yan, bakit may pagkakaibang values na ganyan. Okay? So halimbawa, tingnan ninyo to, sabi ko advertising industry saka mga business interests. Dito sa Manila, there is this central business district called the Bonifacio Global City. Marami sa inyo siguro napuntahan na ito, BGC, social, napakamahal ng mga pagkain, napakamahal ng mga apartment. Kahit ako bilang isang professor, hindi ko kayang bumili ng apartment dito or mag-rent kasi yung mga rental dito nasa 40,000 pesos a month, no, para sa isang one bedroom na apartment na condo, no, 40,000, 50,000, ganun siya kamahal, no. Tingnan niyo yung description ng Facebook page ng BGC. Sabi niya, welcome to the home of passionate minds. Tumutukoy ito, yung passionate minds na yan, pag pinagtinignan nyo pa, content analysis nyo pa, yung Facebook page na ito, makikita nyo na ito that they were referring to the millennials and the Gen Z. Millennials and the Gen Z. Ito daw yung mga passionate. Bakit? Kasi may stereotype na kapag ikaw ay millennial, na kapag ikaw ay Gen Z, you are passionate. Committed ka. Kailangan, enjoy na enjoy mo yung ginagawa mo. Ang BGC daw is home of the passionate minds kasi andyan ang mga financial district, andyan ang mga advertising companies, nandyan ang mga headquarters ng mga bagong bangko, andyan ang mga headquarters ng marketing industry. Yan, ganyan. So dapat, sino ba yung pumupunta sa mga banking, finance, advertising, marketing? Yung mga passionate daw. At ang mga Gen Z at mga millennials, passionate daw. See? Nakikita ninyo? Merong pag-stereotype na nangyayari. May essentialism na nangyayari. Napapaisip lang ako pag nakikita ko itong mga comments na ito, yung mga ganyang klaseng mga advertising, kasama ba dyan yung mga kabataan na tinamaan ng Yolanda sa Visayas? Passionate din ba sila nating masasabi? At makakapagtrabaho rin ba sila sa ganyan? Ma-afford din ba nila yung mga ganyang kamamahal na mga apartment para maging home nila ang BGC? Or napakaliit lang na segment ng mga kabataan ang makaka-afford nito? O di hindi tayo pare-pareho ng experience? Paano yung mga kabataan na pinanganak sa Bangsamoro, out of school youth, pinakamataas ang poverty rate, nasa Bangsamoro, mataas din ang conflict, laging may conflict, Marawi siege, nag-aaral ka ngayon sa university, sa MSU, Mindanao State University, das biglang may bombahan, biglang wala ka ng klase, no? Bigla kang wala nang future, biglang walang ganoon na ulit yung mindset mo. Paano 'yun? 'Di ba? Mga kabataan din sila. Thank you for these comments. No, si Reynalyn, nagko-comment sila. Si Nicole, no sir, they cannot afford. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Pag ginagamit natin yung millennials are passionate, Gen Z people are passionate, ipaglalaban nila ang passion nila. Sino yun? Sino ang may afford ng passion? Tingnan nyo ito, isa pa. Another, sa Twitter naman ito, nilaunch ang isang napaka-social na mall, estancia, dito sa Pasig. Nakasulat, tingnan mo yung tweet. Ortigas Land, yung real estate. Ortigas Land says, the new east wing of Estancia was designed by millennials for millennials, quote unquote. Ortigas Cinemas includes 4 regular and 2 premier cinemas. There's also an SM store in the mall. So mall naman. Tingnan niyo yung claim. Designed by millennials for millennials. Again, ang tanong ko, sinong millennial ba ang pinag-uusapan dyan? Sinong millennial? Sinong millennial ang makaka-afford nito? Sino ang makaka-access nito? Kita ninyo? Every time we use the word millennial, sa totoo lang, anong nare-realize ninyo? Share with me. Anong nare-realize na ninyo ngayon sa lesson na ito? Tell me. I have maybe 10 to 15 more minutes para mas marami tayong time sa open forum. At siguro pag-isipan rin ninyo yung mga realizations na yan, tapos share with me sa open forum. Gusto ko maging maganda at malalim ang open forum natin. Ano yung mga nare-realize ninyo now na nagso-sociology of youth tayo? Nagso-sociology of generations tayo. Diba? Ano yung mga nararamdaman din ninyo? Are you happy? Are you inspired? Are you disappointed? Tell me. Thanks, Nico. O, tingnan nyo ito, advertising. Favorite ko yung stereotype na millennials and the Gen Z, they're tech savvy. Mahilig sila sa cellphone, mahilig sila sa gadgets, mahilig sila sa ganun. Stereotype, di ba? Tapos, magkakaroon ng mga advertisements na ganito, no? Magkakaroon ng sale ng Lazada, magkakaroon ng smart prepaid, Giga Life, mga ganyan, ano? I-advertise na ganyan. Tapos ang claim ay, we want to cater to the needs of the digital natives, ang mga millennials at mga Gen Z, yung mga pinanganak na nagko-computer na, hindi sila nagta-typewriter katulad ng mga nanay or mga tito-tita natin. Computer na agad sila, mag-gadget na agad sila, mas smartphone na agad sila. So again, may stereotyping. Sandali. Di ba nung nagkaroon nga ng pandemic, na-realize natin na hindi tayo lahat kaya makapag-online. Ngayon nga lang dito sa Zoom natin, ilan yung in and out kasi hirap na hirap ang internet connection nila. Sa Facebook, ilan lang yung in and out. Exactly, Reynalyn, inequality of social status ba yan? Saka si Christine, di na ma-afford. So again, kita nyo how the advertising industry stereotypes the youth today? May mali, di ba? May mali. Ito talaga kinaiinisan ko ito. Teka, bago ako magpatuloy, babasahin ko lang ang sinabi ni Hazel. Nagkakaroon po ng hindi pantay na pagtingin sa estado ng henerasyon mayroon sa bawat kabataan. Exactly. This is a great point. Hindi pantay, exagerado, tapos hindi pantay, essentialist. Thank you. Now you're starting to think. Thank you. Tingnan nyo ito. Favorite ko dito. Isang article ito sa Manila Standard. Sabi nila, tingnan nyo. Nagkaroon daw ng survey. Survey daw. Okay? Nag-survey daw sila at sabi, within Generation Z, tingnan nyo yung sa paragraph sa baba, first column, potentially accounting for over 20% of the workforce by 2020, their views on technology as well as the workplace will reshape the workforce. Tingnan nyo. Number one, sabi na lang sa survey nila, Gen Z wants to work with cutting-edge technologies. Gusto daw nila high-tech gadgets. May pa-survey pa, may percentage pa. 88% of Filipinos aspire to work with cutting-edge technologies. 97% Filipinos will consider the type of technology provided as important when considering two similar jobs. Yung technology daw. Sandali lang. Hindi ba ngayon nga lang mahirapan pa yung walang kuryente yung ibang mga lugar sa Pilipinas? Ang dami-daming urban poor at rural poor, walang kuryente. Generator ang ginagamit. Di ba napaka-essentialist, napaka-stereotype? Thank you for this comment sa chat. Sabi ng chat dito sa Zoom, the word millennial itself is being normalized in society already, which formulates a lot of misconception about them. Thank you. This is a this is a very smart comment. Ilalagay ko ito dito sa Facebook para makita ng iba. The word millennial, thank you. Kung sino man yan, thank you. You're very smart. Exactly the point. Nagkakaroon ng stereotyping, tapos pag na-stereotype, na-generalize, tapos pag nagkaroon ng generalization, people judge your generation. Yung youth as a moral problem, yung pinakita ko kanina sa inyo. Number two, balikan natin yung nasa screen. Gen Z, mga Gen Z daw, kayo are eager to share your knowledge to reduce an inevitable digital divide among 5 generations in the workplace. May survey na naman. Number three, kayo daw ay confident about your tech skills, pero hindi kayo workforce ready. So kailangan daw yung mga organizations mag-upskill ng kanilang mga kabataan sa kanilang workplace. So ano nakikita ninyo dito? Pasok ba kayo sa description nito ng article na ito about Gen Z? You're tech savvy, you want cutting edge technologies, you want to be high tech. Paano yun? So you're realizing, okay? So keep your comments coming, keep your sharing, keep your thoughts coming, ideas coming, okay? Tuloy tayo. In other words, this is my big insight. In Philippine society, millennial or Gen Z culture is not only articulated by adults and internalized by the youth. It is defined by the privilege about the privilege. The discourse about the minority has been imposed on the majority. Pag sinabing millennial Gen Z, techie. Millennial Gen Z, passionate. Millennial Gen Z, impatient. Naghahanap parati ng trabaho, lipat-lipat ng trabaho kasi laging nabubore. Millennial Gen Z, magaling, mahusay, highly educated. Wait a minute. Sino ang tinutukoy ng mga stereotypes na yun? It is defined by the privilege about the privilege. Minority lang yun. The discourse about the minority has been imposed on the majority. Sino ba ang majority sa Pilipinas? Hindi ba maraming mga kabataan ang hirap pa ngayon? Alice, thank you for that comment. Exactly, sabi ni Alice. May isa pang comment dito sa akin sa Zoom, sabi ay, labeling creates generational boundaries. These boundaries produce extremes to both the old and the new. Technology, for instance, must be inclusive regardless of age. This mindset is problematic in our nation's workforce. Ang talino, ilalagay ko ulit sa Facebook. Sorry ha, nakikisingit ako sa comment section sa Facebook kasi para makita rin ninyo yung mga pinag-uusapan dito sa Zoom. Okay? So, konti na lang to. I'm almost done. No, I'm halfway. Yeah, I'm almost done. Really. In other words, young people in the Philippines today are fragmented. Fragmented. Economic situation, ilan sa mga parents ninyo ang may trabaho ngayon at walang trabaho? Pinalala ng pandemic. Unemployment. Before the pandemic, pero tinatawag na unemployment, youth unemployment. Okay? Ang tawag doon, youth unemployment. Within the 18 to 24 age bracket, okay, ilan dyan na may trabaho, ilan dyan ang walang trabaho. Yung walang trabaho, yun yung tinatawag na youth unemployment. Alam nyo kung ano? Tinignan ko yung statistics. 50%. 50, before the pandemic. 50%, 50% of 18 to 24-year-old Filipinos jobless. Ibig sabihin, mga fresh graduates, walang trabaho. Before the pandemic. So most likely, mas lumala yan ngayon. No? So ano yun? So kanina sinasabi nung article na gusto laging tech savvy, pero actually ang problema ay trabaho pa rin. Yung walang trabaho, maraming mga kabataan. Siyempre gusto ko lahat ng mga estudyante ko, gusto ko lahat kayo makahanap ng trabaho pagka-graduate. Pero yun ang situation natin ngayon. May mga ibang makakapagtrabaho at mayroong ibang hindi makakapagtrabaho. At yung mga taong makakapagtrabaho, hindi lahat makakapagtrabaho sa BGC. Yung iba, nahihirapan. Fragmented. Number 3, educational access. Maraming out-of-school youth today. And finally, marami pang ibang modes of social inequality. In sociology, we often talk about inequality in terms of class. Diba? The bourgeois and the proletariat, very Marxist. That's correct. That's important. But I also want to argue, I also want to propose to you all that there are other modes of inequality. Ethnicity, for example, in the Philippines. I think we can come up with a good analysis and realize that the Moro people in the Philippines, the Muslim Filipinos, yung mga Moro, they live in Bangsamoro, Mindanao, no? Magindanaoan, Maranao, Tausug, Sama, Liacan, no? Yung mga ganon. We know that if you are Moro, most likely you are below poverty threshold. Meron ding geography, urban, rural divide, no? And then within a city, we can also analyze who enjoys private space and who suffers in the public space, no? Pwede rin ganon. Modes of social inequality. Those who can afford their own private cars and those who can only afford to take the jeepney. Inequality rin yun. Yes, class, definitely class, but we also want to recognize na it is expressed. That inequality is expressed in many, many ways in Philippine society. And I challenge you, my students, to be sensitive, to be critical. Inequality, especially in your generation. Okay? Wala na lang yan. Sige. For example, ito, no? I'm doing a lot of research in Marawi, kaya malapit sa puso ko ang Marawi siege, ang Maranao. Immediately after the Marawi siege in 2017, I went there with some of my friends, some of my colleagues, mga sociologists also at the Mindanao State University in Iligan. We visited the place and conducted interviews there. So can you imagine the impact of conflict, a government's decision to destroy the city, right? You can just imagine the impact and the consequences on people. Even to this day, as we speak, my students, ladies and gentlemen, even today as we speak, a lot of these people are still unable to go back to their own houses, to their own shelters, and they will never be able to. Never. Ito yung research namin ni Setrin, sociologist din siya, sociology professor sa MSU, Iligan, IIT. This came out just last month or 2 months ago. This is about the youth and aspirations of young people in the youth and aspirations in post-conflict Marawi. If you are interested in this article, you can download it sa website ko. I'll show you the link later on. It would be nice to for you no to discover ano yung mga experiences ng mga kabataan, people your age in Marawi. Read this article. In other words, the shared experience of young people today is inequality. Inequality. Meron tayong economic vulnerability in particular, no? Meron din kaya marami sa mga kabataan wala nang interest sa politika kasi you're more concerned about your economic situation. Okay? Kaya sabi ni Randy David, mas lalong lumalala, sabi niya, self-serving politics can only spawn among the younger generation an even more individualistic and self-centered attitude towards life. Randy David is one of the most eminent sociologists in the country today. Sabi niya, parang, itong mga politikong ito, ginagamit lang nila ang mga kabataan tuwing eleksyon. Pero kapag nanalo na sila, wala na ang mga kabataan sa kanilang programa. Pansinin niyo yan. Paulit-ulit yan. Young people lang sasabihin na the youth vote can make a difference. Lagi yan. Lagi naririnig yan. And actually, personally, I hate it. No? I hate it whenever I hear that. Kasi laging yung burden nasa kabataan. Pero whenever these politicians win, how many policies have actually they created to help our youth today? Sure, meron ng free education, yan, yung mga ganon, no? Etc. But I want us to understand, our young people are still lagging behind in behind the rest of the world. Yung educational quality natin, alam niyo yan, ladies and gentlemen, right? That we are the weakest in terms of science and mathematics, for example, in the world. And then they say the youth are the hope of the future. Empower the youth. And then you say the youth are the hope of the future. So the big question that we're asking right now one another is this. How do we bridge these divisions? Napaka-fragmented ng libayan natin. Napaka-fragmented ng mga kabataan ngayon. There are educated youth, there are not uneducated youth. There are youth in universities, there are also out-of-school youth. There are young people who are studying there are young people who are able to afford lifestyles at BGC, but there are so many other young people who will never be able to afford those lifestyles at BGC. And they will continue to struggle. So I want you to think about that question as we embark on our open forum. Meanwhile, bilang pagtatapos, I wanted to share this with you. This is a book that I edited noong 2020. It came out to University of Santo Tomas Publishing House. I hope the library at UEP can get a copy of this. If you have, it's available also on Lazada, saka sa Shopee, sa UST mismo. This is everything that I talked about today. I have written about. I have written in this book, together with many other Filipino sociologists. 13 chapters, I think, from different parts of the country talking about Filipino millennials. So if you're interested in the sociology of youth, in the sociology of generations, it's a very good book to refer to. No, I hope this is my first book published many years ago. Tungkol naman ito sa kabataang Katolikong Pilipino. If you are interested in how religion is changing in the lives of young people today, maybe this is a good book to read also. If you want a copy, just email me. Gawa tayo ng paraan. I hope the library can also get a copy. Okay? Let me end here. I want to share with you my website. You can download my articles, my publications there, all my scholarly publications. This is my email account, and that's my Twitter handle. Okay, so Hazel, yeah, if you want to email me, Hazel, yeah, this is my email address. Please email me, and I'll be happy to share what I could with you. But if I may encourage you, visit my website first. Ma-download ninyo dyan yung marami kong mga publications. All right, okay, dokes. All right, thank you so much for your time and attention. I really hope that this has been a fruitful and provocative lesson para sa ating lahat. Let's have our open forum. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the very informative lecture. Answering for your questions po on what can we do to merge these divisions. Will my answer be considered? I think po these divisions can be merged by looking at the core concepts of the society as to how the values of each generations are formulated.
Yeah.
Thank you po, sir. And moving on, sir, yes.
No, thank you. No, I just wanted to ask before you move on. What do you think are mga values that you have that are very different from the values of your parents? Give me one
Personally,
example.
sir.
Yeah, personally. Give me an example.
Personally, sir, frankly, I am very goal-oriented. So as my parents, but I think the level of how goal-oriented I am and my parents, I think that's where the difference is seen.
I see. Good. That's a very good start. Thank you, Grisel.
Thank you, sir. If you have questions, we will now move on to the open forum. Reminders for our participants. For the Zoom participants, you may send your questions via the chat box, or you may use the raise hand button and ask your persons personally. And to our Facebook participants, you may drop your questions in the comment section. Thank you, Eman. I think our moderator is experiencing a very light technical problem. So, sir, earlier during your discussions, we have seen that a lot of participants have also agreed and reacted to your lecture.
Oo nga eh. I can only imagine how different it would be if we were doing this on campus, di ba? And we would, we would be interacting with one another. I thank you. I really thank you. I hope nakatulong itong lecture na ito. Iman seems to be back here. Hello, Iman.
If you have questions to our participants, you can send them now. Or use the raise hand button.
So hello guys. So I will be the one. So I think we should start. Am I audible? Hello, good morning.
Yes, you are. Good morning. Good
Am I
morning,
audible,
Iman.
sir? Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Certainly.
So hello guys, I'm Eman and I will be the one who will be the moderator for this open forum. And guys, I hope everyone will ask their questions because social engagement starts with meaningful discussion starts with asking questions. And everyone has the opportunity to ask questions to Sir Jayeel habang nandito pa siya. And I think there are questions who were already submitted, and I think, sir, um, here they are. So the first question is, um, does collision always happen between generations? Um, is it possible not to happen?
It's a good question. Who asked that question?
Unfortunately, the question
Private? Is
came from an
anonymous?
anonymous sender.
That's fine. That's fine. Hello. That's a great question. That's a brilliant question. Um, there could be overlaps, no? Overlaps. Um, but I think the most important thing is that you can discern, you can discover the boundaries of a generation based on their competing values, no? So halimbawa, when it comes to divorce, same-sex marriage, gender equality, I think young people are increasingly more open to these things. Women empowerment, um, the role of the women, etc. Um, you find it a more young, you find that attitude a more young among more and more young people today. Iman, um, is it possible that between generations there is no conflict? Of course, it is possible. Pero the key answer, the what can the question, of course, is how can we make it happen and how can we take advantage of it? Hindi ko na to sinama kanina sa lecture ko, Iman, but I want now maybe I can talk about it. I think what really matters is we entertain this idea of intergenerational justice. No, it's an idea na I'm developing also. I'm beginning to develop in my own writing. And let me just put it here dito sa comment section. The idea is that we want to participate. We want different generations to come together and be responsible for one another, right? So the adults are responsible for young people, and young people are also responsible for adults. May mga direct applications itong intergenerational justice, for example, sa taxation, right? The adults pay your taxes so that young people can go to school, right? And then when
Yes.
young people become adults, right? When you become adults yourselves, you pay your taxes so that more and more young people can also go to school for free. No, ganon. That's one example of intergenerational justice. Pero what I am saying from a more sociological perspective is let's come together, let's have a conversation. Okay? Ano po yung mga karanasan ng mga matatanda na hindi namin naiintindihan ngayon? At ano yung mga karanasan namin mga kabataan ngayon na hindi naiintindihan ng mga matatanda? Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. And kailangan ba talaga itong pag-awayan, or is it or can we come together and really understand one another? So that's a big question. It's a great question to ask for your thesis, maybe, for your project. Yeah. Sige. I'll end there muna, Iman. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, sir. So basically, your recommendation is for us to be to engage into meaningful discussions, especially on clarifying things from both generations, from different generations, so that we will avoid miscommunication, misconception, so that nagagrasp din natin kung ano yung side ng previous generations, especially in world of today, wherein masyadong marami tayo nakikita online. Maraming bagay na dinidefine sa social media na hindi masyadong clouded para sa atin. So that's the main reason why communication is the key. So thank you very much,
Yes.
sir. So we'll proceed to the next question. The next question here is the development of technology has huge impact to the generational labeling, or there are other factors?
Okay. Can you say that one more time, Iman, just to be sure?
Okay, sir. Wait. is the development of technology has huge impact to the generational labeling, or there are other factors?
Yeah, correct. Very good. No, very good. Um, yung technological advancements are used to categorize generations. No, for example, there's an iPhone generation, there's a typewriter generation, merong mga Nokia generation. Yun yung mga mas matatanda. So ask your professors if they had a Nokia when they were in college. That was the big phone. That was the most expensive phone back in the day. Um, um, Nagagamit yun to be a marker of generational differences. Ang problema ko lang sa ganun, Iman, is that it always assumes that people can afford technology. You get it? It always assumes that people can afford technology. When in reality, in the Philippine context, the battle is still between people who can afford technology and people who cannot afford technology. And so those people who cannot afford technology, they end up using cheaper technologies, cheaper brands, uh, uh, pero hindi necessarily maganda yung quality. No? So sa akin, we need to be sensitive, to be aware of these things. When we say young people today are digital natives, ibig sabihin pinanganak na conscious ka na about online technologies, internet technologies. Okay, fine. Pero let's understand that not everybody can access technology the same way like you do. No? It really all boils down to affordability, to access, even as basic as, do you have an electricity? Do you have electricity at home? Ganun pala problema. Yeah, so that's my answer to the question.
So okay, sir. Thank you again for your answer. Actually, it's really interesting, especially when it comes to technological discussions. Like karamihan sa kabataan ngayon are having their own online classes, and there are people na from the start of the pandemic who are struggling with the use of technology kasi syempre some of them are cannot afford this type of technology, and it's really I don't parang it's a mistake to generalize na people can cope up with um people can cope up with this type of situation. Okay, sir. So the next question is wait, sir. Yung mga na-experience po ba ng mga unang generation, kung hindi po ba yon nangyari, posible po ba na iba yung mga generation natin ngayon? So okay, I'll repeat the question, sir. Yung mga na-experience po ba ng mga unang generation, kung hindi po ba yun nangyari, possible po ba na iba yung mga generation natin ngayon?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Because we are shaped by our own experiences, di ba? Again, babalik tayo sa sociological imagination. Our values are shaped by our experiences. If we all grew up in the time of massive economic poverty, people are unemployed, we will have a very different mindset today. We will have a very different outlook today. If we were born, if our parents were born at a time when the Philippines is really, if the Philippines were very rich, in other words, right? If the Philippines were very rich, and everybody could go to school, enjoy a decent lifestyle, our values would be very different. Makikita natin yan sa politics natin ngayon, Iman. No? Makikita natin sa politics natin here right now. A lot of people are drawn to strongman leadership, no? Gusto nila ng disciplinarian, authoritarian. And this is also the case not just for the adults, but also for young people today, because they believe that the promises of democracy after 1986 failed them. It's a shared experience, creating this political attitude na maybe we need somebody, we need a leader who can be more disciplinarian, and maybe if we have a disciplinarian or a strongman leader, we will have a more progressive country. May mga ganyan eh. That political attitude, you can trace it back to the generational experiences of people who went through the people power revolution, and then certainly before that, martial law under Ferdinand Marcos. Magkakaiba. Kung ibang karanasan, iba rin ang values na mabubuo sa atin. Sociology yan eh, di ba? The sociological perspective. We are shaped by the society, by historical occurrences. Thank you, Iman.
So okay, sir. Thank you for that answer again. So we'll proceed to the next question. Yung mga wait, this is the next question. Sorry, sir. Do we have to change our values because we don't live in BGC? This question is from Miss Oliva Campusano.
Hi, ma'am. Hi, ma'am Oliva. Thanks for this question. I don't think we should change our values just because we don't live in BGC, no? Or we should change our values. I think the bigger question in my mind is are we becoming a more just society? I think that's the question. Are we becoming a more just society? Are we a society where the weakest, the most marginalized can have a better chance at life? Ano nangyayari kasi sa BGC, di ba? Personally, even I told you that already. Even I cannot afford. Even I cannot afford the lifestyle of BGC. And I'm already a professor. I'm already associate professor, head of the department. Supposedly earning a good salary, pero I can just imagine how more difficult it would be for other people of my generation. So are we a just society? Socially just? Is there social justice in our society? Hindi, I don't think so. And so I feel that that's a question that we need to ask ourselves in relation to values. Are we all aiming and aspiring to a more just society wherein the division is not between the rich and the poor? Alam mo yun, that doesn't exist. Ideally, in an ideal, where people can live decent lives. I hope that answers the question, Imam Olivia. Iman? Marcel, mukhang nawawala si Iman. Iman?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay na po. I do disagree. I do agree with your answer, sir. Especially that nowadays, parang most of us will define, we'll see social justice based on our economic determination. Kung mayaman ka or mahirap ka. So ano ang basis ng justice natin? So it's also a big question for us, and it's for sociology. It's really interesting. So okay, sir, we'll proceed to the next question. The next question is from Alice. What's the most interesting trend in your generation, sir? So this question is too personal, sir.
One more time. Say that again.
What is the
Say that
most
again.
interesting trend in your generation?
Most interesting trend. Interesting. Napaisip ako bigla. Um, I think it's not unique to my generation, but it's I think many of my contemporaries around, and I've gone around the Philippines, and I do interact with a lot of my colleagues and friends and students around the Philippines. I think pare-pareho pa rin yung trend. I think the trend is still we want to live we want to live decent lives, for the lack of a better word. We all want to, as we all are aspiring to a society in which we can in which nobody else suffers. I think, no, I think, and I say that in view of number one, the desire of many Filipinos to get an education, do it for their families, make sure that their kids go to school. I know that. I benefited from that, and I still continue to see that among my friends, my peers. And I continue to see that even among you. I'm very sure, Iman, na ikaw mismo, kayo ni Crisel, you want to be successful, not just for yourselves, but for your family. It hasn't changed. It continues to be the aspiration of many Filipinos today, across the board. Number two, in view of our political differences, some of you are voting for Bongbong Marcos, some of you are voting for Leni Robredo, some of you are voting for the other candidates. Nag-aaway-away tayo. Nag-aaway-away tayo about historical facts, nag-aaway-away tayo about truth, nag-aaway-away tayo about sino yung dapat mamuno. Pero kung makikinig lang tayo sa bawat isa, makikita talaga natin na lahat tayo nangangarap ng isang mas magandang Pilipinas, where corruption doesn't exist, where political dynasties don't flourish, where people, kapag tinamaan sila ng bagyo, nakaka-recover agad sila, matutugunan agad yung mga pangangailangan nila, things like that. So in view of our political differences, sa totoo lang, we're all actually aiming for the same thing. So, may pagbabago ba yung generation ko sa previous generation of my parents and your generation? I think we're all aspiring to exactly the same thing. Well-being. No? Well-being. Isang maalwang buhay, isang matiwasay na buhay. That's not really a very cute answer to your question, Iman. But
Okay,
I
sir.
hope that
Actually, when the question was being asked, excuse me, sir.
yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Actually, when the question was being asked, it seems like masyado siya, it hits you parang it hits you from the core. Parang masyado siyang personal, no? But eventually, when you discuss things, parang I realized na we need to see or recognize our differences. So kasi paano natin ma-attain, di ba sir, yung matiwasay na pamumuhay if we will not recognize each other's flaws. Kung ano yung perception niya sa mga bagay-bagay. So, thank you for that question, sir, and it's really informative. So, maghahanap pa tayo, sir, ng questions if there are still questions from the chat box and from the Facebook page. Um,
Eman, we have a question in the
guys, if
chat
you
box.
still have questions, ate, meron?
Yes, we have a question in the
Ito,
chat box.
okay, there's another question, sir. It's a question from Miss Oliva Camposano. If society shapes values and the premise where we live in an element to this, does it follow that where we live would define our values?
The
Again, I'll
answer,
repeat the question.
yeah,
If society shapes values and the premise we live in an element to this, does it follow that where we live would define our values?
from a sociological perspective, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Where you live, where you live is an intersection of class, generational
Yes.
change, religion, politics, economy. Where you live is an intersection of all those social forces. And they shape the way we understand the world. So, from a very strongly sociological perspective, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. And all I'm saying from the point of view of the sociology of generations is that by being born at this point in time, where all these situations are taking place and and whatnot, your values are shaped accordingly. That's one way of looking. That's one way of answering the question. Okay. Pero at the same time, I also want us to understand that hindi naman tayo isolated lang dito sa lugar na ito and then that's it, right? It's as if we're not having a conversation with people who live in other countries, no? Or we're conversing with people who do not belong to the same area. I think it's a little bit more complicated and more complex than that. Um, our values are also shaped by the online spaces that we inhabit, diba? So sometimes you may realize that your values are also informed by what you see on social media. Hindi na yun physical space right now, but also digital space. So may ganun pa rin component. I think ang mahalaga lang na tingnan natin from a sociological perspective, what social forces, history, politics, economy, generations, um, religion, ano ba, traditions, and so forth. How do they come together in shaping the values of, of a person or of a generation or of our young people today? So that's a long answer to the question, but the answer is yes. But let's be mindful of all this interplay of forces. I hope that answers your question, Ma'am Olivia. Salamat po.
Okay, sir. It reminds me of the discussion with Ma'am Aina Social. She did mention na everything is interrelated. Lahat ng social institutions are interrelated. So, bawat isang social institution ay maaaring mag-shape kung anong perspective and na-review ako doon konti, sir.
Correct. Ang tawag natin doon ay
Okay.
socialization. Ang tawag natin doon ay
There's next
socialization.
question. Okay, sir?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you are correct, Iman. We call that socialization, right? Externalization, internalization, about the social construction of reality. So we call that socialization. Institutions are very useful. Yeah. Go ahead, Iman.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. So we'll proceed to the next question, which is, why is that society is being grouped as time goes by, like Generation X, Generation Z, Generation N Alpha? Question was asked by Adraya.
Oo. Si Rafonsil, ito yung lecture ko, di ba? Na parang generations are actually being labeled, people are being labeled according to these generational categories precisely because of many factors. No? One factor is you have, sinabi ko kanina, you have local journalists, commentators, psychologists, sociologists. We simply just copy these labels from North America. Tapos ginagamit natin ito to say na, oh, dito sa Pilipinas, meron din tayong Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z. No, we're simply copying, copy-paste. Many journalists, even social scientists are committing this mistake. I hope that's very clear. Number two, pinakita ko rin yung role ng advertising, right? So pinakita ko kanina yung examples dun sa article na you have the HR industry or the advertising companies who would be interested to stereotype generations according to these labels because it's very useful for their business practices. No? So number three, yung human resources. So human resources, di ba, na parang it's very easy, it's very neat, it's very cut and dry to say na, yung mga kabataan ngayon, yung mga Gen Z ngayon, lagi silang gusto nila technology. Yung mga kabataan ngayon gusto nila laging mga passion projects, no? Yung mga kabataan ngayon laging mga impatient. So it's very useful for the HR, human resource industry to categorize manpower, human resources in that sense para mas madali nilang ma-target kung ano yung gusto nilang gawin sa workforce nila. But again, without them realizing it, gaya na sinabi ko throughout this lecture, ang nangyayari is marami tayo na i-exclude doon sa analysis na yon. Marami mga kabataan do not enjoy technology, do not enjoy the basic access to services and the things that we are that some of us take for granted, like the internet. Hindi lahat. Thank you, Rapunzel.
Sir, we have another question sent to us. Why are millennials labeled entitled and lazy? Why are we constantly trashed in the media? The sender of the question is anonymous.
Okay. So again, gaya na sinabi ko sa lecture ko kanina, this is essentialism. Yan nga yung point, hindi ba, ng stereotyping. They come from our teachers, they come from from the advertising industry, they come from journalists, they come from all these different institutions, if you will, who do not understand that that young people in the Philippines are fragmented. They are only looking at, most of the time, young people in Metro Manila. Obviously, young people in Metro Manila are studying in good schools and they can find a job after that, after getting educated and so forth. Pero hindi nila nakikita that there are all kinds of young people around the Philippines. And that to me is the problem. And that to me is what I am challenging in my writings, in my teaching, and in my scholarship. So help me, no? Help me challenge these stereotypes. Mali ang mga stereotypes na yan. Hindi yan nakakatulong para maunawaan natin yung tunay na kalagayan ng mga kabataan.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for accommodating our questions. Sir, pahabol lang po, before we go, would it be okay to ask for some word of advice or encouragement for us, the graduating students of BA Sociology, and to those who are still unsure as to why they took this course?
Okay. Thank you, Crisel. So let me now speak to all the sociology students. First things first, let me just assure you that you are in the right course. It's a difficult course. It's an uncertain course. It's a confusing course, but you are in the right course. And why am I saying this? We sociologists have the capacity to understand the problems of our society in ways that other courses don't. Bakit? Gaya na sinabi kanina ni Iman, sabi ng inyong professor, everything is interconnected. Everything is interrelated. Everything. And I tell you, only sociologists have that capacity to take a step back and look at the world and say, yeah, economy, politics, history, religion, family life, generations, you can see the connections. And you see how they make a difference or they impact on people's lives. That's one. The other reason the other reason why I think you are in the right course is this. Sociologists are not interested in only analyzing society. We are here because we want to make this world a better place. We want to change society. And I do hope and pray, Crisel, you, Iman, your peers, your generation, and all other sociology majors who are watching us today, I want you to realize at the core, at the very core of our discipline is this desire to make the world a better place. Gender inequality bothers us. Poverty troubles us. Domestic violence affects us. We say no to every form of injustice there is in the world because we understand it and we know that it is wrong. I think sociologists, we have this responsibility, not only intellectual, but also moral, to change, to challenge, confront injustice wherever it occurs. That is our moral calling as sociologists. And I hope you will not give up on that calling. So you might be uncertain about this course, but I tell you, this is the right course. Okay, dokes,
Thank you so
ready na ba yun?
much. Thank you
Ready
so
na ba
much,
yun?
sir. That was very inspiring, and we will surely keep that in mind. But before we go, we would like to give you, our lecturer, a certificate of appreciation as a simple token of gratitude for gracing us your time and effort.
Crystal, naka-mute ka.
Sorry, sir. The certificate reads University of Eastern Philippines College of Arts and Communication, Bachelor of Arts in Sociology. This certificate of appreciation is presented to Dr. Jayeel S. Cornelio for sharing his expertise as the keynote speaker during the Pagpalawod sa Katilingban, diving into the depths of community through the Tenets of Sociology, a webinar organized by the Senior BA Sociology students of University of Eastern Philippines, given this 11th day of March 2022 via Zoom. Signed, Liana Melissa E. De La Rosa, Professor, Internship, BA Sociology. Signed, Raisa LT, Program Coordinator, BA Sociology. Signed, Maria Alfred G. Banawis, Dean, College of Arts and Communication. Again, let us all give our speaker a virtual round of applause. So thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Crisel. Thank you so much, Karina Lynn, with whom I was communicating, kay Iman, for moderating this. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. Padayon at wag bibitaw. Marami pa tayong gagawin sa ating bansa.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for accommodating us despite your schedule.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you po.
Thank you, sir.
Announcement to our participants. The link for the attendance of the morning session is now available in the comment section of the Facebook Live and in the Zoom chat box. Once again, thank you to our speaker, Sir Jayeel, thank you, and to our participants in the Facebook Live and in the Zoom who attended the morning session of this webinar. I hope to see you all again at 1 p.m.
Salamat, Jayeel.
Thank you, sir.
Next time.
Hi ma'am, maraming salamat. Kamusta po?
Okay lang. Salamat ha. Sa uulitin.
Salamat.
Pero
Sana
next time
makadalaw
dito
ako
ka na.
dyan. Yes, yan ang plano
Oo
Yan ang
nga
plano.
eh. Oo, sure. Ikot kayo namin dito sa summer. Salamat ha. Sa uulitin.
Uulitin, walang problema.
Ang saya.
Sa ulitin.
Oo, ang saya ng ang saya ng discussion.
Natuwa rin po ako. Thank you so much. And I hope to be there. Please
Oo,
take care.
si Paul kasi may may oral defense ng
Sayang.
niya. MA.
Oo.
Oo, pero na-online siya. Nakinig siya sa'yo, pero hindi siya maka-open ng camera kasi nag-aaral siya. Oo.
Oo nga, nag-message siya sa akin ni January. Na-miss ko na yung grupo nyo. Na-miss ko na po.
Punta ka dito pag wala ng COVID. Invite ka
Pwede
namin.
na.
Oo, sige.
Gawin ko
Salamat,
natin.
Jayeel.
God bless po. Ingat po. God bless.
God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you po, sir.
Thank you po, sir.
Thank you po.
Nasadan nakislat sa ibang nga course.
What I choice.
Diri ko aram akong for sa college.
Why sociology be your first choice? It is a study about the world with the goal of improving people's lives, and it develops your skills to understand everything around you. Here are the professions that you might partake as sociology graduate. University of Eastern Philippines has the only BA Sociology program in Eastern Visayas. In UEP Sociological Society, we have faculty who support students to achieve success. We develop students who practices critical thinking and analysis. We conduct surveys and do social experiments. We attend outside university seminars. We do not only study the social changes, we also work on it. We learn and we achieve. Make sociology your choice for a better future.
College of Arts and Communication. You need this great love.
Sino? Awarag na.